Hi, everyone. Thank y'all for joining me today. And we're going to be talking about deaf and hard of hearing contestants in the reality TV show Survivor. Really enjoyed this class and I've learned a lot from everyone. So I hope I can teach y'all something here today. So, so, according to the World Health Association, there's over 8 billion people in the world, and 16% of that number experience significant disabilities. In that 16%, 5% experience hearing loss. They define that as exceeding 35 decibels. Putting this with Survivor, in Survivor, there are over 43 seasons and 644 contestants. In that number, 10 of them have experienced a disability. So putting those numbers together, math, 1.55% of the contestants represent a disability, and in that tiny number, 0.621% represent deaf and hard of hearing. So that's not very great looking at it side by side, but let's keep going. We're going to go ahead and meet the contestants. Christy Smith, she was in season 6. She came in 6th place. She was the first deaf contestant on Survivor. Then, not until season 30, we have Nina Porsche. She came in 19th place. She's also deaf. Jonathan Hurley, he is hard of hearing. He was in season 36 and he came in 5th place. He is very interesting because he did not disclose that he is hard of hearing until post production. Ricard Foyer, he was in season 41. He came in 5th place and he is also hard of hearing. So now, very quickly, we're going to talk about literary findings that I found. They're not super surprising. Media contributes to deaf and hard of hearing stereotypes. This is because they don't really showcase someone as being a unique individual with ideas and passion. A lot of times, media just shows them as being deaf, and that's it. So that is what reinforces the stereotype most of the time. Also, deaf and hard of hearing individuals are praised for competing. So when they're on a competition show, a lot of times they get a lot of praise, like "Wow, thank you for representing us." But a lot of times they just want to be on the show. They just want to compete. We see this with Josh Blue. He has cerebral palsy, and came first place on the last comic standing. A lot of people kept congratulating him, like, "Wow, good job! Thank you so much for representing disabilities." And he has a really good quote, just being like, "I'm really glad I inspired you, but that really wasn't my intention. I just want to be. I love comedy." Media uses symbolic gestures to show inclusion. This is showcased by CBS, which is the network that Survivor is on, as they recently in 2022 mandated that 50% of any cast is a minority. And like you might look at this and go, "Wow, that's really awesome," but they really did that because they were under scrutiny. So it wasn't really like they were doing this out of just because this is a good thing and the right thing to do. They were doing this so they could have money and have viewers. Um, Lastly, reality TV has negative societal impacts. Of course, it does. Social scientists found that reality TV increases anxiety, aggression, as well as unhealthy romantic relationships. So now, the three things I looked at mainly while doing this research for contestants is the accommodations they received, the social dynamics within the tribe, and their narrative representation post production. So for the accommodations, there really weren't too many. Um, Nina had a cochlear implant, and Christy had a hearing aid on her left ear. Um, in regard, he was able to sit on a specific side of the tribal council, so his ear could be facing um, everyone who was talking that had better hearing with it. Um, both women really struggled at night as they weren't able to read lips because it was dark outside. Going to social dynamics, this is what really kind of broke my heart researching this. The tribes were terrible to Christy and Nina. They were excluded, and both times, tribe members were asked them if they could compete because they didn't believe in them. There was one time Nina was going to compete, and it was a water competition, and she was going to take out her processor, and then her team, her tribe was just like, no, we don't want you to, and they kind of sabotaged her into not competing, which was just awful to watch. And they ended up losing, which I mean, I think they deserved. Social dynamics for Ricard and Donathan were way different. And this kind of goes to passing. You know, they were able to kind of blend in a way and act how they believe they should. So then moving to narrative representation. Um, Nina and Christy, their narrative in the show was surrounded by their deafness, but not for Ricard and Donathan. Okay, accommodation findings. This is blank because there were none. I'm just kidding, you can laugh. So there is assistive technology, that's the hearing aids, as well as strategic placement with Ricard on one side of the tribal council. This was honestly not very surprising. This is a show of Survivor. Um, but I would like to say that I think they could do accommodations well because they do give contestants feminine products who need them. Um, but they don't give men those accommodations because they don't need them. And so I think they could do it well. They just don't know how. The women that were deaf already had a huge target on their back. So, you know, they wouldn't want to be walking around with a lantern at night to read lips because people were already trying to vote them out because they were thought they were weak. So I believe that there may not be accommodation because the tribe was so is so unkind to people with that are deaf and are forthcoming of about being deaf. Okay, so social dynamics. Um, this was something we could compare and contrast more. The deaf contestants, they felt isolated, and there were altercations regarding communication for both Nina and Christy. And the hard of hearing contestants, they were able to pass, and Ricard actually states that he views being hard of hearing as an advantage, which I found very interesting. Moving on to narrative representation, the deaf contestants, their story really focused on their disability post production, whereas the hard of hearing contestants, they had a lot more diverse storylines than the other two did. And I want to mention that I did not think I was going to divide these up in the slides. I thought I was originally just going to do bullet points of the findings. However, it was such a pattern, and it is interesting that both women were deaf and both men were hard of hearing. So I don't know if that is also something that plays into this. But, you know, it's something to be looked at in the future. In conclusion, the reality TV show Survivor, they have a lot to improve on, but they are doing better than their contestants are in ways of inclusivity. Going into this, I kind of made production the villain in my brain, and I imagined that tribe members would be accommodating to each other as they can rely on each other and be allies, but they really weren't. And that was kind of disappointing. But I do think it is important to note that $1 million is on the line, so you don't really see the best of everyone. but do you see more true colors of everyone, and that they don't want to be accommodating? So, in conclusion, the hard of hearing contestants were able to be more successful on this show rather than the deaf contestants. I didn't mean to make this more of a deaf deaf versus hard of hearing, but that's kind of what it turned into. Um, as I really just wanted to explore all experiences. I do think it would be very interesting if someone did look into that in the future and explored a more quantitative study. So, thank you all for watching. I hope y'all enjoyed this kind of Reader's Digest version of my research paper, and I hope to see y'all in the spring.